Hello, my dear viewers. This amazing story will be very instructive for you. It is very interesting and beautiful. I wish you enjoy watching it. Ivy looked longingly at the neat rows of raspberries. The large berries were already ripe. Such a bountiful crop would have pleased her greatly in the past. She would have liked to make jam for her son Samuel. He had loved it since he was a little boy. It is not only tasty but also healthy, especially in winter during colds. But now for whom to make jam? Samuel is gone. His only son, whom he and his husband Jack raised in love and care, died 2 months ago. And the whole life of the parents lost its meaning. How unfair is that? Samuel was only 30 years old. They had hoped so much that their son would marry soon, give them grandchildren. But he was in no hurry to start a family. He said he had to earn enough money first, and in the last 2 years things had started to work out for him. As he assured his parents a year ago, he promised to introduce them to a girl. He said he had fallen in love, that their dream would finally come true. They would have a daughter, in-law, and then the long-awaited grandchildren. But he kept putting off coming home. A lot of work was going on. No time for rest. Oh, what a job. Samuel had told his parents from a young age that he would provide them with a comfortable old age. He got straight A's in school. He tried very hard. His teachers thought he was a genius. Mathematicians predicted a successful future for him. But there was no place for such a talent in the small town where they lived, 20 kilometers away from the regional center. So he started going to a special school with a mathematical bias in the last 2 years of his studies. And after that, he went to a university in London on his own, without his parents. He took the train and was met in London by his great-aunt. He lived with her while he took his exams, and then he moved to a hostel. The kid understood that he had to cope on his own. The late child quickly became independent, knowing that his father and mother's health often failed him and they could not help him much, even though they always tried their best. Ivy had already stopped dreaming of motherhood when her only pregnancy occurred at nearly 42. And she never thought, never guessed about such a gift at such a mature age. Infertility had been her diagnosis since the early years of her marriage. She underwent a long period of therapy, but to no avail. She cried and worried at first, but then she got over it. Her husband Jack was always a support and backbone. He said that it seemed to be their destiny, to live together and love each other. But when the woman's doctor said that Ivy was not going through menopause, but that she was pregnant, that it was 5 months along, she was taken aback and didn't know how to say it. Will my husband be happy about this news or vice versa? After all, he's not a young man. He turned 45 himself. We didn't celebrate the anniversary. There was no time to celebrate the anniversary. At that time, something incomprehensible was going on in the country. The news on TV was so disturbing that I didn't even want to watch it. What will happen next? How to live? Jack, upon learning that he was going to be a father after all, was unspeakably happy and even cried unexpectedly, something that had never happened to him in all the years they had lived together. That was when Ivy's spirits brightened. She was not so old for motherhood. They'd have time to raise the child, and she didn't listen to some friends and acquaintances who knew. I don't want to be born handicapped, they said. No, my son was born healthy and very smart. To the parents' delight. There was no ultrasound scan back then, and it was impossible to know exactly who they were expecting, a boy or a girl. They did not make it up. And when I saw the baby, Ivy thought Samuel. Such a nice boy. Jack liked the name, too. But after all, those who prophesied that the parents would cry were right. It wasn't that there would be any problems with the baby. Samuel was a joy and a light in the window all of his 30 years of life. But how to survive his death? The whole Ivy was crying terribly. The tears, too, seemed to have run out in these past 2 months. What do they need raspberries for now? Who do they make jam for? A couple of jars are enough for themselves. And there's such a crop that you can't boil it. You can't overcook it. And we have to pick the berries. Otherwise they'll fall to the ground. It's a pity. Ivy quickly filled a large bowl with large berries and took her time going into the house. Ivy, you wanted to do the cleaning today. Her husband reminded her of our plans together and talked about Samuel's room. I didn't want to turn it into a mausoleum, to leave it the way it had been when he was alive. Even though he didn't visit his parents often, it was nice for him to spend the night in his childhood room. And now why keep his things there? It only scratches the soul. You could give the books to the library or the school. How many textbooks are left for high school? There aren't any now. A collection of model cars is also gathering dust on the shelf. And some kid could play with them. Maybe Samuel's clothes will come in handy. Good quality, beautiful clothes. With these thoughts in mind, Ivy opened the door to her son's room. A July breeze blew in her face through the open window. Jack must have decided to air the room in the morning. Just as Ivy thought, her gaze fell upon the bed of her dead son. She froze on the threshold. I can't believe my eyes. The husband with the vacuum cleaner carefully walked around his spouse to reach the outlet. The bed stood on the other side of the room, where he wasn't looking, but Ivy touched his arm, and when he turned around, still not having turned on the vacuum cleaner, she silently pointed at it with a glance that rendered her own speechless. Here Jack was momentarily dumbfounded. On Samuel's bed, at the very headboard, which rested against the wall next to the open window, was a baby seat. It was the kind you usually carry babies in the car, and the caped baby was sleeping peacefully in it. As if on cue, the couple held hands and quietly approached the bed. Ivy, how did he get here? The first thing Jack asked in a whisper. Through the window, Ivy suggested. She was here half an hour ago. Just opened it. I see something else is here. Ivy pointed to a bulky travel bag next to the bed. She carefully opened the zipper. At the top were diapers, and next to them were jars of baby food in a transparent bag, bottles, and nipples. What a beautiful baby boy, quietly admired Ivy, and such a tiny baby. The baby wrinkled its little nose and cried. She carefully took him in her arms, supporting his little head. And her hands remember. She smiled at the baby, who opened his eyes. There's something in here. Jack took a large paper envelope out of the basket, and from it a birth certificate. Father Samuel, Mother Diana. It turns out that this is our grandson. Ivy gasped in amazement and joy. Why didn't Samuel tell us? I didn't make it. The certificate was issued on the day our son died 2 months ago. But who is Diana? And why was our grandson dropped off through the window? There's nothing else in the envelope. Maybe a note? No, nothing else. And then the baby cried loudly. He must be hungry. Well, get some supplies and let's feed Pablo. I'd been waiting for the call for a couple of hours. Throwing a glance at the empty crib, Diana could hardly hold back her tears, immediately turned away and sat down at the table in front of her open laptop. The news site page on the monitor reminded her of an unfinished case article with the headline "Girl tried to kill myself, became victim of fraud." She had read it yesterday, and that was when she decided to take the desperate step, unable to endure the torment of conscience. Diane picked up a pack of cigarettes and an expensive lighter. She smoked right in the room, turning to the open door to the balcony. Can I do it now? Pablo no next to her. A tear did roll down her cheek. Shit. When is he going to call? She asked herself aloud. Diane hadn't smoked in almost a year. She'd given it up as soon as she found out she was pregnant. She hadn't smoked before, only for company, or in particularly stressful situations, like this, when anxiety and even fear could paralyze all her thoughts. It was an almost forgotten habit, though it was harmful, but it calmed her nerves. She did not reach for a cigarette even when she learned that the only man she could love had died absurdly. She hadn't smoked then because Pablo had been there for her. But now, Diana shuddered when she heard the melody that informed her of the incoming call on the simple cell phone that had replaced her expensive phone. She had decided a long time ago not to use it. She tossed her cigarette into the ashtray. How did it go? It was fine. A familiar male voice said exactly the words she wanted to hear in Samuel's parents' room. Did they see you? No. The baby is fine. He slept most of the way. I'm on my way back now. Thank you, Diana exhaled. I'm waiting for you. Could it all be over now? Would she really follow through with her plan? And then what would happen? Will she get the punishment she deserves? Will she be able to get a suspended sentence? Or will she spend several years in prison without the chance to see her son? Better that than waiting every day to be arrested. What will happen then? It was better not to think about that. Diana entered the cramped bathroom. Everything here was small except the mirror above the sink, in which she looked at herself, brushed her long blonde hair for a couple of minutes, then with inescapable determination took the scissors and cut it to her shoulders. She opened the dye box, mixed the two ingredients, and quickly applied the mixture to her hair. Black would probably be a good color for her, pulling back the white skin and blue eyes. Somehow, though, it might already make a difference. In half an hour, she would be a brunette. Diana pulled a dark cherry mikim pants and jacket, a thin white blouse, and a box of low-heeled shoes out of her closet. It would be more comfortable that way. An hour and a half later, she was ready. A light makeup job opened up the dark circles under her eyes. She didn't have to change her closet. She was used to things she'd picked out for a long time, and shopping was easy. She ordered a cab and left the apartment wearing sunglasses. When she got a text message on her phone that the car had pulled up, Diane first went to the train station in town and grabbed a small gym bag from the automatic locker, and then asked for a ride to a small village outside of town. How in the world had she gotten so mixed up? She thought, looking out the car window. Why had she ever gotten involved with Kevin? They'd gone to law school together. He'd even tried to woo her. However, with his looks, even with a more successful hookup, he didn't stand a chance of winning Diane's heart. She didn't like his fishy eyes, colorless and a little on the way out, right away. Only once he made her an offer she couldn't refuse. No, of course he didn't dare ask her to marry him. He offered something else, an easy way to make money. He said at the time he had heard of such a way and decided to try it himself. But he needed an assistant who inspires confidence in his appearance. Diana, he said, was a perfect fit. Is this the pattern? Kevin told me. We go to some city, rent an apartment, and then advertise for sale for much less than the market price. And it's cash only. I'll play the part of the realtor and you play the part of the notary. We choose a buyer who won't go to the police. For example, whose money for the apartment was obtained illegally, and such a person understands. By saying that he was cheated, he will set himself up, but we will take the money and go home. This is fraud. Diana became indignant. Do you know the law? Nasty, smiled Kevin. But there are a lot of chances to make money this way. And there's also a chance of going to jail, Diana added. Diana refused at first, but her thoughts kept returning to her classmate's proposal. They successfully passed the session. After the third year came the summer vacations, and Diana went to her mother, who lived in a village 100 kilometers from the city where she studied. Her mother raised Diana on her own. She didn't know where her father was. In fact, her mother wasn't married either, so the subject never really came up in their family. They lived quite poor in an old house, inherited from her grandmother, and there was no one to help them. And when she arrived, Diana found out that her mother needed urgent surgery, which cost money, and of course there was none. In the city, the girl worked part-time as a waitress or a courier after classes. She was saving to buy herself something to wear. She collected some for a summer vacation. She wanted to go with a classmate to the mountains for a few days. Now those plans were ruined. But even what she could gather was a mere crumb compared to the amount of money she needed for her mother's treatment. And then Diana made up her mind, called and said that she agreed, and lied to her mother about the job she had managed to find on occasion. And there was a promise that she could earn enough to pay for the surgery and rehabilitation afterwards. Kevin did not hide his joy when he heard about Diana's agreement. That's how their business began. Kevin had the money to rent an apartment and an office for a notary, and he had time to make the forms and stamps somewhere. The very low price of the apartment they rented downtown with a view of the park was found the same day he posted the ad on a local website. He took care of the SIM card for his phone, which he was going to throw away when the case was over. All the fake documents for the apartment that he had made himself look very convincing. You could not tell it from the real ones. All that was left was to choose a buyer. Diane waited for Vesti in her office while Kevin showed her the apartment. "Tomorrow we'll do the paperwork cheerfully," he announced, calling Diane when she was already learning from idleness, tired of flipping through the news feed on her cell phone. "Our buyer is a middle-aged, overweight man." Kevin chuckled nastily. "Perfect for us." She told him at once that their relationship was strictly businesslike. They spent the night in separate rooms. But she was still afraid Kevin would make a pass at her. Fortunately, that didn't happen, though she could see that he was extremely annoyed by the situation. He must have hoped, in the meantime, to promote his relationship with Diana from friendly to more intimate. Diana had carefully prepared for her role as a notary. She gathered her hair into a bun at the nape of her neck and wore thick-rimmed glasses, which made her look a good 10 years older. She finished the look with a gray Mickey and a blouse and a ghastly flower. She was very worried when Kevin brought a man with a smug face and a prominent belly into the office. And with him a girl in a mini dress with puffy lips. She quickly pulled herself together and instantly got into character. Diana immediately sternly informed the man that if he was married, he had to give his spouse permission for the transaction when purchasing real estate. No, this girl is buying the apartment. He gave her last name, first name, patronymic. And I'll just give the necessary amount to the realtors. Would you like to see all the documents? Of course, Diane pretended to scrutinize the papers she had printed out on the printer the day before. Kevin, having certified them beforehand with stamps, which of course the buyer did not look into. "There's nothing wrong here," she summarized. "And I take it you have a power of attorney from the seller?" she asked Kevin. And he immediately handed her other papers. "So everything is all right here too. All that's left is to hand over the money. If you want, right here and sign the contract of sale." Kevin counted the money and held out the key. "The apartment is all yours. Congratulations." When the girl with her happy face and the smug man left the office, Diana closed the door, clicked the lock, collected the remaining papers from the fake deal, tore them into small pieces, and threw them into a garbage bag. They had taken all their belongings out of the apartment the morning before. Their travel bags were also under the table here. Diana was afraid that the man would be back, that he would suspect something was wrong, and then they would be in trouble. Kevin, on the other hand, was perfectly calm. "We'll leave the office now and go to the train station." "That went great. You did a great job." His fishy eyes sparkled with delight. "You acted like a real professional. I would have believed you myself." He took a beautifully framed plaque off the wall that said Notary Karen. Sort of an alias for Diana in this role. And he put it in his bag. "Why?" Diana was surprised. "It will come in handy." Kevin winked at her. "I don't play these games anymore," she said firmly. "I hope that now you think everything went like clockwork. We can do it again someplace else. It's a working scheme. You can see for yourself. At the time, Diane was sure there would be no money to repeat it, and she got exactly half of it. It was more than enough for her mother's treatment, and even enough for a rented apartment and a modest life in the city, where she would go to university for another year and not have to work as a waitress or a courier or anything else. But how could she go wrong? It was the kind of thing they'd done, with more than one more time. But that was later. And then, for the first time, she could not cope with the fear that they would be found, if not the law enforcement agencies, so the smug man who had paid for the fake purchase of an apartment for his mistress of a decent sum of money. Time passed. Summer vacation was over. Her mother recovered from surgery, and Diane continued her studies. Kevin sometimes tried to take her out for a movie or a nightclub. She refused, and soon he gave up on her. I was beginning to think he'd found himself another object of attention. However, after she got her diploma, he stopped her outside the university building. Maybe we should start a new business after all. The conspirators winked. What are your plans for the rest of your life? Get a job. Diana shrugged her shoulders vaguely. She didn't really know where she could get a job. The labor market seemed to be overflowing with lawyers and economists. Plus, every employer wanted a specialist with experience. She had already sent her resume to several vacancies, but no one invited her for an interview. If you change your mind, do you know my phone number? That was the end of the story. A month later, Diane was still unemployed. The crumbs of money left over from their joint scam were melting by the day. No amount of saving helped. And, as luck would have it, her mother had a relapse. Now she needed an expensive drug. So after much hesitation, Diane called him. "Is your offer still on the table?" she asked. Of course he was. It seemed as if he was just waiting for her call, sitting on his travel bag. And so their illegal business went on. They roamed the cities selling other people's apartments. The buyers were people who had no sympathy for Diana. Besides, she found an excuse to save her mother from death. When she asked where the money had come from, Diana said she'd gotten a job as an assistant to a successful lawyer. That answer suited her mother only a year later, at the time of her next relapse. No more expensive drugs or the best doctors helped. Mom was gone. Diane took her death hard. Kevin said she needed to rest and gave her a tour to Sunny Island. There, she actually managed to recover. But when she returned, she told Kevin that she was going out of business. He didn't object. Only again, he said he would always welcome her back. She had the money. She moved to London and decided to learn how to invest. Her first attempts at making money in this direction came to fruition. Diane started attending forums, conferences, and other events related to investing. At one of them, she met Samuel. She was impressed not only with his good looks, although he looked flawless in a strict Mickham and white shirt, but also with his ability to figure out the tricky questions about where to invest her money without losing it. He had an unconditional flair, or too well versed in all those matters that for her were still not entirely clear. At first, he just gave her good advice, but it wasn't long before their relationship began to take a turn for the worse, and she realized she was in love, and it didn't take long before Samuel confessed it to her. Their romance developed violently. He said he wanted to meet his parents, that he had plans for their life together. Diane's head was spinning with happiness. She was already mentally imagining herself as Samuel's wife, and it turned out to be the most wonderful thing that could happen to her. She sat in a coffee shop, enjoying a sunny morning, dreaming of the evening they would spend together with Glory. He suggested she live together and apply for a marriage license. She should have packed, because there was no point in paying for 2 rented apartments, when she increasingly stayed with him overnight and even for a few days. And that's when Kevin walked into the coffee shop. How did he just find her? He confidently headed straight for her table. They hadn't seen each other for months, and Diane thought he was gone from her life forever. Seeing him made her uncomfortable. But he said he was very happy, and from everything she could see, he really was. "I have a new business," he bragged. "Found a computer genius who pawns fake sites for those eager to invest money in shares of domestic big companies. You have no idea how easy it is to scam suckers at a business like this. Sure, the sites are constantly being figured out, but we manage to harvest and then create new ones. I met this guy in Bali. I've been living there for the last 6 months. I invite you to come along." "No, thank you," Diana said. "No. I have other plans. I'm getting married." "How so?" Kevin's face changed. He obviously wasn't expecting to hear that. "Yes. I met a good man with whom I am happy. So let all our business with you be in the past." Diane got up and wanted to leave. "No, wait." Kevin grabbed her by the arm and forced her to a seat at the table. "Does your fiancé know what you were doing before you met him? Maybe I should open my eyes to him." "Kevin, why?" Diana tried to speak calmly, but she didn't expect to hear him say that. "Because I've dreamed of marrying you myself all the years we've known each other. You sent me to the front, but with no hope of getting out. I'm suffering, you know, so why should you be happy?" There was so much anger in his eyes that Diana became really scared. "And what do you want?" quietly she asked. "Why didn't you come to Bali with me?" "I actually came for you. And don't even ask me what will happen if you refuse. I'm capable of a lot of things. And promising to tell your fiancé about your past, believe me, it's just flowers. So pack your bags, honey, and I'll pick you up tonight, and I know where you live." When Kevin walked out of the coffee shop, Diane's first thought was to immediately call the man and tell him about everything that had just fallen on her. But what would happen next? What if Samuel, finding out about her past, didn't want to be with her anymore himself? He had repeatedly said that he valued honesty in relationships and business. That's the most important thing to him. And what is Kevin capable of? What were his threats? How did he know where she lived? Here, Diane's thoughts were jumbled from all angles. She couldn't see anything good. But one thing she knew for sure was going to Bali with him. The worst possible thing. Then she decided to run away, just to get away in an unknown direction from Kevin and from Samuel. Then she would somehow find a way to let her lover know about her. But right now, it was better to hide. She went straight from the coffee shop to the Atom at the train station, withdrawing more cash. Suddenly, the computer genius of Kevin's new friend was able to trace her card. The thought might have seemed paranoid to her before, but not now. She texted Samuel, saying that she had to leave urgently, and that she would explain herself to him later. She immediately turned off her phone. In a month, she had perfectly changed several cities, where she rented apartments for a few days. All the while, she was trying to figure out how to live her life, and nothing good came to mind. She bought herself a laptop and a simple cell phone. She found a simple shell phone. She found a simple job on the internet, not for the money, but just to keep herself busy, and soon realized that she was pregnant. She immediately wanted to tell Samuel. She decided to write him a letter and send it by email. She went to the website of the company where he worked as an investment consultant. Immediately she came across a news story. On the homepage of the website was a picture from the last business forum, and on the right side of it stood Samuel, the president of the company, and next to him a young, attractive woman. Their faces were turned toward each other, and they looked like they were on a date, not a business meeting. Diana couldn't hold back the tears. Samuel had already managed to find a replacement for her. So why would he write a letter? But what was she going to do on her own? How was she going to live? Could she take care of the baby herself, or was it better to terminate the pregnancy? The last thought seemed monstrous to her. Yes, now she was all alone, but a baby would save her from loneliness. And it's a baby from the man she loves. Even though their relationship had not been a long one, Now she had to think about herself and the baby's future. That was the decision she made that day. When she was tired of moving from city to city, she wanted to stay somewhere at least until the baby was born. One day, the bus she was riding on stopped at a small southern village by the sea. She got off and said she wasn't going any farther. Then she rented an apartment that had been rented for a year and paid for it right away. Diane still couldn't be sure that Kevin had calmed down and was no longer looking for her. And she remembered Samuel with sadness and longing. Not only had her feelings for him not faded, but they had grown stronger, and she now watched the news on the website of the company where he worked every day. There were no more pictures of Samuel, and his name occasionally flashed in the news articles. When it came to new investment projects, it happened that Diana fought the urge to call him. She never turned on her old phone. But she remembered Samuel's number by heart. She just never dared to dial it. When Diane went into labor and she took a cab to a private maternity hospital, where she had already arranged with the doctor in advance, for the first time she thought something could happen to her, and she had no one who could take care of newborn babies. That's when she turned to the young midwife. "This is the phone number I ask you to call if I have any complications. This is the father of the baby. His name is Samuel. And in fact, the doctor soon told me that Diane would need surgery. She couldn't give birth on her own." In the morning, when she opened her eyes, she saw Samuel with the baby in his arms. What a wonderful dream, Diana thought. If only it were like this, for real. "How are you?" Samuel asked. "Are all doubts about the unreality of what is happening? He is not dreaming." "How did you find us?" Diane answered. "Question by question, by question by question. I got the call, and I went right away. We have a son. Why have you been hiding from me? What have I done to offend you? What was wrong?" Tears streamed down Diana's cheeks. "I have so much to tell you. You'll still have time." Samuel looked at her fondly and lovingly. How could she ever think that he had a crush on another woman? When he found out the reason Diane had run away, what her connection to Kevin was, he immediately called his friend Mickey, the lawyer, and he promised to look into it and see how he could help. The day she was discharged from the hospital, Samuel offered to immediately execute the birth certificate for her son, who was named Pablo. After picking up the registry office documents, he brought Diane and the baby to her rented apartment, and he himself went to the city train station to meet Mickey. Diana never saw Samuel again. He should have been back with his friend long ago. And when Diana saw a familiar number on her cell phone, she immediately answered, "It's Mickey. Tell me your address." Diana couldn't understand why her friend Samuel was talking to her and not him. But she didn't ask any questions. Only her heart was pounding in her chest, knowing that something bad had happened. When Mickey entered the apartment alone, she held the baby in her arms. He had just fallen asleep. Samuel's friend asked him to put Pablo to bed and then told her the terrible news. All of Diane's dreams that happiness in life was possible, after all, were shattered into ashes. When she learned that her lover had lost control of his car while driving up a mountain along the seashore, his car had fallen off a cliff. There were no tears. Inside, everything froze. Mickey spoke some words of sympathy, but she couldn't hear him. Only when the baby cried, Diana, obeying her maternal instinct, took him from the crib and put him to her breast. But immediately she realized that she had no milk. She told Mickey. He immediately went to the drugstore and quickly returned with baby formula, bottles and socks. He fiddled around in the kitchen by himself while he prepared food for the baby and then fed him himself. Diane sat in her chair, staring dumbly at her hands. It seemed to her that she would not be able to get up. What was going to be chained to that chair forever now? "You don't have to go to the funeral," Mickey told her, putting the baby to bed as he emptied his bottle and fell asleep. "I took care of everything. Maybe it really was better that way." Samuel remained forever alive, cheerful, beautiful, and loved in his memory. His consciousness still didn't want to accept the fact that he was gone. Why had 8 months without Samuel been so foolishly lost when they could have been that time together? Do you want me to find you a babysitter? Mickey sat down next to the chair on the floor and took her hand in his palm. Can you handle a baby? Samuel himself said. There had been an operation. Thank you. I can handle it. And then the tears poured from her voice like a dam had burst. She sank to the floor and sat down next to Mickey, pressing herself against his shoulder. He stroked her head like a little girl. Then the flow of tears dried up, and he took her into the kitchen and poured her some tea. When he only had time to know where what lay, he navigated unmistakably. And she was grateful to him for this timely care. Can you tell me now about your problem that you had to leave Samuel? He asked as he washed the cups. Yes. He didn't interrupt while she was talking, brought out his notebook and wrote something in it. Asked to find a picture of Kevin in his old cell phone, which had been lying off and without a SIM card for a long time. She found a portrait of him in a picture he had once sent her. I'll take care of it all, Mickey promised. You need a change of residence now. I'll find somewhere to move you. Do you think Kevin can find us? Diane asked fearfully. It is possible. It's better to be on the safe side. You're very vulnerable right now with the baby. He made some calls, and in the evening he moved Diana and her son from the village to the city, to the apartment of some acquaintances who were away. Don't open it for anyone, Mickey ordered. Write a list of things you might need, and I'll buy them all. This forced fuss distracted Diane from her grief. But when she was left with the baby, alone in a strange apartment, she gave vent to her feelings. Pablo, as if he understood that his mother was very sick, hardly ever cried, and Diana tried to keep him in her arms or close to her. Mickey came back after the funeral a few days later. Said he had to go to Moscow, to Samuel's apartment, to take care of his business, and then take care of Diana's case. She simply trusted him, thanking God that at such a tragic moment in her life, there was a faithful companion. Everything in the enforcer's apartment was the same as it had been when he was alive. It seemed to her that he had gone somewhere and would return soon, and they would live together. In the meantime, she had to wait for him. This illusion helped Diana survive. Mickey came every evening, bringing groceries and everything she needed for Diana and the baby. He still insisted that she stay in the apartment, bought a stroller for Pablo, and the three of them took walks in the park almost daily. I was able to find out that only one episode of yours has been prosecuted for fraud, Mickey reported. One evening, unloading grocery bags, said, I need to go to that town and find out on the spot what can be done there. I found people to help, and when I'm done with that, I can go to the police. Do you want me to tell you about our business together? Diana looked at Mickey, frightened. What if I get a real sentence? Tears came to her eyes at the thought of having to part with her child and go to jail. I take care of everything, Mickey assured her. Otherwise, we can't get rid of it. You're going to pay back the money to the man who went to the police after he allegedly bought the apartment from you, and you're going to tell on Kevin. You'll help the investigation. We might be able to get away with a fine or, at the very least, probation. But they'll probably lock Kevin up, and then you can breathe easy. And the money? I'm not sure I'll have that much money. Right now, I'll help. I have Samuel's money. He and I had investment projects together, and we were going to invest in another one together. In short, it shouldn't bother you now. And Diane was alone again with a 2-month-old baby boy. On baby food, he was gaining weight well, and at birth he was almost 4 kilograms. Diana's stitches after surgery had time to be sewn up, and physically he felt well. But with mental worries, she still had a long way to go. Samuel was gone. The thought somehow entered her mind, but invariably brought tears. The unfulfilled dreams of a happy life together with the one she loved tormented her heart, and those sad thoughts alternated with anxious ones about having to answer for what she had managed to do to Kevin. She received a text message from Mickey, who said he would be home later that evening. Diane decided to prepare something for his arrival. She wanted to do something to thank him. She looked at the supplies in the refrigerator, wondering what he liked to eat, and realized that she knew nothing about him at all. He takes care of her and the baby, helps solve her past criminal cases. She hasn't even once asked him anything: who he lives with, how he spends his time when he's not busy with her problems. Here at dinner, if he agreed to stay, we'd have to talk about it. The baby was about to wake up, and Diane was preparing a mixture for him. When she heard the front door open, "Did Mickey get here early?" She stepped out into the hallway and froze in surprise. Kevin was standing on the doorstep with a bunch of lockpicks, a twist she and Mickey hadn't anticipated. "I can see you're not happy," he grinned. "Don't do anything foolish." He noticed that Diana glanced around the hallway, thinking it might also serve as a weapon of self-defense, but he still didn't see anything suitable. But Kevin took the gun out of his pocket, twirled it in his hands, and put it back. "What do you want?" Diana asked. Fear gave way to hatred despite the display of weapons. "You and I are in business together," Kevin declared. "I can't take no for an answer. I've already prepared everything. It only remains for you to play the role of a notary like in the good old days. Your office is ready. It's just around the corner. We'll turn this case around and I'll be out of your life forever. You have my word, unless, of course, you want to continue. You're a mommy now, though. By the way, I took care of that. A nanny for your baby. There's a girl coming right now to take him for a walk while we're busy with business. And that will be my insurance. You know what I'm talking about. Your son will be a hostage. Call it what you want. Let's just do it. I had to wait a long time for your guard to leave. You have a talent for finding caring lovers. You followed me." Diana was stunned, and for quite a long time. "I just really need the money right now, so I have to act fast. What about your computer genius in Bali? Things didn't go well with him. He threw me away in a brazen way. He took everything and left me practically naked. That's why we have to do our business right here, at our place of residence, which we've never done before. But I suggest we go away right after the deal. We can go together if you want, but we can go apart." While Kevin was saying all that, a daring plan was brewing in Kevin's head. "Good," she decisively declared to me and herself. "My guard, as you put it, is pretty annoying. Let's make some money and get a divorce." "That's good." Kevin was delighted. "I recognize my beautiful Diana. How much do you need to pack?" "At least an hour. There's a baby to feed. Don't think I'm going to leave you alone and you're going to run away from me again," Kevin warned. "I'll call the buyer and the nanny, but I'm not leaving the apartment. And you know what's in my pocket. I'm not kidding. But let's not threaten him." Diana looked into his fishy eyes without a shadow of fear. I agreed, so we work. "Great," he laughed. "Just give me your phone," he said in a serious tone. Diana took out her cell phone, which she hadn't used in over a year, and gave it to him. An hour later, he took the baby carriage out of the entrance, and after him, Diana came out with Pablo in her arms. The baby was sleeping. She carefully put him in the stroller. "They are already waiting for us in the nearest park," Kevin said, "and the buyer will be at the office in an hour. So we have time to get there safely." "Are you sure it wasn't them?" Diana whispered in my ear. "Who's better off?" As I was assured by the agency, Kevin also answered in a whisper. "And she will only give the child to me," he added. As they walked out of the park, Diane restrained herself from turning around, from giving away her anxiety, or her plan wouldn't work. Kevin held her hand tightly, but she wasn't going to do anything stupid. Kevin rented a room on the first floor of an apartment building for an office. The room had a couple of chairs, an office chair, and a desk with papers already on it. On the wall by the entrance hung the sign he had taken, "You're really well prepared." Diana smiled contentedly. "So who's our victim?" "You'll see." Kevin winked, put on the wide-rimmed glasses that Kevin handed her, and sat down comfortably. Just then, a young girl walked through the office door. Diane thought for a moment that she had accidentally walked in here. She got the wrong door, but Kevin said hello to her and offered her a seat in the chair across from the notary. Was this really the buyer? She couldn't believe that Kevin had come to this. They used to sell other people's apartments to other people, unfaithful husbands buying properties for their mistresses, or those who built a business on renting out apartments by the day or for long periods. They always chose buyers who didn't give them the last of their money. And this girl is obviously not the mistress of a wealthy man. She's even an adult. He took her passport, Georgina Rodriguez. She turned 18 3 months ago. Where are her parents? I didn't think I'd be so lucky. The girl read out happily. I couldn't have dreamed of such a mansion after being in an orphanage. I was looking for a modest apartment but close to work. I got a job at a cafe nearby. It's like 5 minutes and I'm there. And the buyers from my parents' house in the village found me so quickly. They'll be here in a month, and they already gave me the money. They took a house for their dacha. Of course, I didn't have enough money, but I took out a loan. I'm working, so I'll pay them back. The main thing is that now I have such a luxurious apartment. Where do I sign? Here it is. Diana tried to keep the trembling in her hands, and she succeeded. Congratulations on your lucky purchase. Kevin put the money in his bag. Here are your keys. When the door closed behind the girl, I wanted to lunge at Kevin with my fists. How low he'd gotten and dragged her into this shameful affair. Cheating an orphan girl who was not only now homeless, but also on credit. But then her whole plan would fall apart, which meant that she had to keep her wits about her. You know, you were right, Diana declared with a smile. A common cause with you. That's really what I needed. I'm back in my element. I didn't expect you to change your outlook on life so quickly. Kevin was surprised. Besides, you can see what a buyer you are. But I couldn't find anyone else. If you and I had worked together from the beginning of this case, I wouldn't have been in such a hurry, and I could have found someone else. Who cares? As lightheartedly as possible, Diana gave out. Kevin smiled delightedly, and she was amused that he was so quick to fall for her unsophisticated lie. I missed our adventures, she continued. And I'd like to celebrate a good bargain. There's a hotel nearby that rents rooms by the hour. You're surprising me more and more. Kevin got a little wary. What about your baby? What's going to happen to him? Diane shrugged her shoulders. You trust that nanny? He said she's the best. She's got good reviews. So she'll take him out for a while longer. Pablo and I are going to rest for a while. Diana turned on all the charm and other feminine tricks she could, and then looked meaningfully into Kevin's fishy eyes. You've been dreaming about it for so long, haven't you? Yes, absolutely. But suddenly, Kevin said with a slight hesitation, well, if you don't want anything. Diana shook her lips in frustration. Forget it. No, I want to. Let's go. Half an hour later, they were at the hotel. The receptionist showed them pictures of the rooms. Diana meticulously looked at each photo, and finally she chose the room, decorated in black and red tones, but it was the bed she was most interested in. Or rather, its headboard. Kevin still didn't seem to fully believe that his luck could smile on him today. He was foolishly widening his fishy eyes as they entered the room. She stated that she had longed to fulfill her innermost desires, but had never found a suitable partner that she was very sorry she had neglected Kevin before. She asked him to open the champagne they bought at the bar at the hotel reception desk. Kevin took his glass and drained it in a volley and immediately grazed Diane's lips. She had enough self-control not to be embarrassed and disgust. She pulled Kevin away from her and began to stretch his shirt. Then she stripped him of his clothes and threw him on the bed in just his underwear. And Kevin noticed that Diana was still in her little black dress, deftly buttoned up all the buttons. Don't rush things. I need to get ready. She took her bag slowly and pulled out the handcuffs. Do you mind playing? Wow. Kevin must have lost his head at the prospect, because his common sense definitely gave way to other desires. I love this kind of game. Then have fun. She finished by covering Diamond's mouth with a gag. The strap on the back of his head buckled. Now you're ready, she proclaimed and turned on the music. As she left the room, she noticed the anger in Kevin's eyes. Now he understood everything. Diane grabbed Kevin's bag with the money in it and quickly left the room, locking the door. She put a "Do Not Disturb" sign on the handle and headed for the back door and the exit from the floor. No one saw her as she got into the back seat, into the driveway of her car, who was sitting guests. On our way, she said. She still managed to send Mickey a text message from Samuel's apartment on her cell phone, which she had been using lately. She told him what kind of trouble she was in and how she could get out of it at the hotel. As she walked down the stairs, she read the return message. Mickey had managed to come back and pick her up at the hotel. Otherwise, she would have had to call a cab. But beyond that, her plan was ruined without him. Now she could share it in detail with her friend, who immediately promised to help her. They drove up fairly quickly to the park where the babysitter was supposed to walk with the baby. Diana saw the stroller from afar and turned down another alley, and Mickey moved straight to the bench where a rose-looking girl was sitting, tucked away on her phone. "Excuse me, can you help me?" Mickey addressed her quietly as he approached the bench. What happened? She looked up in surprise and smiled coquettishly at the handsome young man. "I seem to be lost." Mickey smiled charmingly in response. "The app must have malfunctioned and led me to the wrong place. I need to go this way. Please take a look at it and tell me the best way to go." The girl was forced to get up and approach him, and she did so quite willingly. Mickey immediately began to talk about her bad walk, but she seemed to have forgotten all about the baby, listening enthusiastically to the compliments that the young man generously showered on her. At that time, Diana walked quietly over to the stroller with her back to them, took the sleeping baby in her arms, and quickly walked in the direction of Mickey's car, parked at the exit from the park. "And we can meet you tonight, meanwhile?" he asked her. "Yes, of course," she rejoiced. "I'll be out soon. Put your phone number in my cell phone." While the girl was busy, Mickey turned his head for a second and saw that Diane had already gotten into the car. "Unfortunately, I have to go now," Mickey sighed sadly. "But I'll call you before I see you." He smiled and walked briskly toward his car. I didn't walk up to the stroller and was dumbfounded. There was a note and money instead of a baby. The sum was twice as much as what the young man, who called himself Daima, had promised her for the service. "I took my baby away. I don't need the stroller. You can go home now. Thank you for your help, Diana." Read the note to the girl. She looked around, perplexed and frightened, but saw no one. She tried to call Kevin, but he didn't pick up. Then she texted him to say that Diane had picked up her baby herself, even though Kevin adamantly insisted that she wait for him. Herself? So what? Did she get paid money? And if he complained to the agency, she'd show Diana the note, reassure herself that way. The girl went home to get ready for her date and wait for a call from the young man she had just met. It wasn't until close to midnight when she got a call from an enraged Kevin, and the expected call from the new acquaintance never happened. She finally realized she wasn't going to have a romantic rendezvous this evening. The cab stopped in front of the hospital building in the suburban village. A slender brunette with shoulder-length hair and a dark cherry suit and sunglasses got out of the car. In her hands was a gym bag. "Can I see Georgina Rodriguez?" asked the nurse. "Take off your glasses." "Who are you?" "A distant relative. Just got back from abroad yesterday." "Oh, how nice," the nurse rejoiced. The poor girl had run into crooks. When she found out that she was homeless and without a loan, she took pills and got drunk with grief. Good thing her neighbor was there in time to call an ambulance. "Georgina's in room 5. She's already walking." "Let me go get her." Diana's heart squeezed painfully when she saw the skinny girl in a bathrobe and slippers, who 2 days ago in the notary's office was rejoicing at the successful acquisition of her own apartment in the capital. How grateful Diana was to her neighbor for not letting her die. Diana herself could not even imagine how she would be able to go on living, and if the irreparable happened. "Are you here to see me?" Georgina looked in surprise at the strange young woman with shoulder-length dark hair. "Who are you?" "I brought your money," Diana said quietly. "It's in this bag, all the money you gave to the crooks for the apartment." "Are you a notary?" Georgina whispered. "Yes, that's me." "But please don't make a fuss," Diana asked, and the girl nodded willingly. "The man you gave money to for someone else's apartment, he is very dangerous, and he has not yet been detained by the police. I can take you to the bank now, in a cab. Put the money in your account. A friend of mine knows a realtor who can help you buy an apartment in the city. And if you want it later, here's his card." Diane reaches into her pocket. "I'll go with you to the bank," Georgina stated with determination. "I'll just wear jeans and a t-shirt." Mickey was on his way back to town, leaving Pablo at Samuel's parents' house. Taking the child to them had been his idea. Diane doubted it, but he assured her that he couldn't handle the baby, and that way he would be safe, because there was no telling what else to expect from Kevin. Diane took his gun, but he might have other weapons. Mickey wanted to let Samuel's parents know they had a grandson back at the funeral. But then the Ivy was taken by ambulance to the hospital right from the cemetery, and the timing didn't seem right to him. Not ready. Nor was he ready for the explanation now that their help was needed. What could he say about Diana? For it was not yet clear what punishment awaited her, or whether it would be avoided her, or whether it would be avoided. And how to answer the question, why hadn't he spoken sooner? After all, 2 months had passed since the funeral. When Mickey saw the open window in the Ivy house, he decided that the best thing for him now was to leave the baby unnoticed and go straight back to Diana. No one really saw him. As he was putting the baby seat with the baby on the bed, the bag of clothes and food, he heard Ivy and Jack find Pablo. And even then, he got in the car and drove back. Mickey asked Diane to wait for him and then go to the police together. But she said she'd handle it on her own. That she'd only write a statement that they'd discussed. There was a risk that Kevin, when apprehended, would start talking about past fraudulent dealings with Diane. But it would be hard to prove. Mickey found out that there were no other cases besides the one he had been able to find out about. And that was the only case. Mickey had already managed to settle by returning the money to the aggrieved customer. Diane walked out of the police building. She wrote in a statement that Kevin had forced her to become his accomplice and fraudulently obtain money from Georgina. She put in writing everything that had happened since Kevin had shown up at Samuel's apartment, which he had opened with a picklock. When Georgina's money was already in her bank account, Diane asked her to write a receipt stating that the entire amount had been received, and this receipt Diane attached to the statement. She left it with the investigator. A picture of Kevin and his gun, which she took when she left him handcuffed to the hotel bed. Diane hadn't gotten very far from the police department yet, when someone approached her from behind and grabbed her arm. It was Kevin. "How have you changed, darling?" His fishy eyes sparkled angrily. "It's getting harder to find you every time. I've already run out of beacons. But the one in your purse survived. I definitely got lucky. I was able to track you down again. By the way, dark hair looks good on you. You look amazing. What were you doing at the police station? Did you turn yourself in, or did you turn me in? Diana was really scared. Still, she should have waited for Mickey, like you said. Why had she naively thought that Kevin wouldn't find her or recognize her? She didn't know what to say to him now, so she just kept quiet, gathering her thoughts, which were scattered in all directions. I can see that you're not in the mood to have a positive conversation with me, Kevin grinned. And I'm not going to let you go after the way you left me at the hotel, scamming me like the last sucker. I won't believe a word you say now. Then there's no point in me answering your questions. Diana was finally able to say with an effort of will, pulling herself together, I wanted to take care of you and your baby myself. Kevin grabbed her hand tightly and led her to the crosswalk. But now I don't know where your baby is. But I have you in my hands, and I have no intention of letting you go. I have eliminated one of your lovers. I will eliminate the other. What does that mean? Diane stopped like a stone. However, they were standing in a crosswalk, and they still had to wait for the green light. The village had no idea where Kevin was taking her, but what he had just said crossed out all other thoughts. That accident on the seashore wasn't an accident, Kevin grinned. I fixed something in your poor man's car, and that's why he didn't make it around the sharp corner. You killed Samuel? Diana was taken aback. I can't believe my ears. Just cleared the obstacle in my way. That's funny. But I drove behind him all the way, and he didn't even notice it. Hatred swept through Diane's mind in a rage that shut down her instinct for self-preservation. With all her might, she pushed Kevin into the driveway where the cars were rushing and flew after him because he held her hand tightly in his. Our Pablo is 1 year old today. What a big boy, what a handsome boy. What does he look like, his daddy? Ivy read, fussing over her grandson, who was sitting on a high chair and pounding the table with a spoon. You'll find it. I think there's a cake brought in, something I ordered from a pastry shop in town. Jack entered the room and could not contain his happy smile when he saw his grandson Pablo. You're hungry, Pablo, so I just fed you, laughed Ivy, looking after the baby, and I'll take the cake. But when she came out of the house, she noticed 2 cars near the yard. She recognized the second one right away. It was Mickey, and they were expecting him a little later. He hugged his dad. Friend's mother tightly and helped her get the cake in the box. As the girl asked Ivy, the last surgery went well. The doctors promised that she will be able to walk without crutches, but a long rehabilitation is still needed. Are you handling the Pablo? Grandpa and I will do everything together. And Pablo is so big already, he started walking on his own, but we'll make it in time, don't worry. And tell Diana that her son is fine. He likes being with his grandparents. Mickey smiled at Babe, and he burst out laughing in response. He's really happy in his family's home. Mickey thought Samuel's parents had become really close to him, too. They didn't know much about what had happened a year ago and what events had followed. Mickey could only explain to those why he was forced to leave the baby behind in secret. She miraculously survived after pushing Kevin under the wheels of a bus, and he pulled her with him. Kevin died at the scene, and she underwent multiple surgeries. It was only now that there was a chance that she could make a final recovery, despite the fact that she had almost said goodbye to life and endured so much. During those months, Diane assured her that she didn't regret what she had done. Mickey never stopped caring for her little Pablo, and then for Samuel's parents, not because he felt obligated in memory of his best friend. He felt that he had found a real family himself. On the eve of Samuel's death, his wife and young daughter had left Mickey for another man. They had gone abroad, and Mickey was left all alone in the wilderness. His worries kept him from revealing himself, Though the loss of his friend was hard for him to bear, he was glad he helped an orphan girl who almost killed herself when she fell victim to Kevin's scam. They managed to find her a small apartment in a nice part of town. Mickey helped her move in and get settled in. Then recently she called and said she was getting married to a nice guy. "Mickey, my son, my hands at the table," Ivy commanded as he finished arranging the many dishes that smelled delicious. "You're going to sleep over, aren't you?" And after an affirmative nod, he put a bottle of shot glasses on the table. "Here's to the health of our birthday boy, his mother, and all his family and friends. By the way, Mickey's up, I think it's safe to say. Diana and I are planning to get married, and we'd love to have you at our wedding.